Right now, if your husband or your wife passes away, Social Security does not call you. There is no letter that arrives automatically explaining your options. There is no agent who reaches out to walk you through it. You have to know to ask, and if you don't, the government will quietly let you keep collecting less money than you're legally owed for the rest of your life, and never once tell you that you had a choice. Here's what almost nobody explains clearly. When your spouse dies, you don't just get one Social Security option, you get two. Your own retirement benefit, based on your own work record, and a survivor benefit, based on your spouse's work record. And the mistake that costs widows and widowers the most money isn't picking the wrong one. It's not knowing you're allowed to switch between them at the right moment. For the rest of your life. I'm Sophia Morgan, and today I'm walking you through exactly what happens to your Social Security when your spouse passes away, the two options you actually have, the specific strategy that can add tens of thousands of dollars over your lifetime, and the mistakes the Social Security office will let you make without ever stopping you, because correcting your choice isn't their job, it's yours. Stay with me through all of it, because the timing detail near the end of this video is the single biggest reason widows leave money on the table, and almost no one explains it out loud. Let's start with the basic shape of what you're entitled to, because most people have never heard it laid out plainly. When your spouse dies, if you were married to them, you become eligible for what's called a survivor benefit. This is different from a spousal benefit, which only exists while both of you are alive. A survivor benefit is calculated off of what your spouse actually earned and actually paid into Social Security over their working life. And depending on when your spouse passed and when they would have claimed, that survivor benefit can be worth significantly more than what you'd receive on your own record, especially if your spouse was the higher earner in the household or if your spouse waited to claim their own benefit later in life, which increases the amount permanently. Here's the part that surprises people the most. You are not stuck picking one benefit and living with it forever. Social Security allows you to claim one benefit first, let the other one continue growing in the background, and then switch to the larger one later. Most widows and widowers never hear this option explained to them at the counter. They're simply asked which benefit they'd like today, and whichever answer they give becomes the one they live with. Because nobody in that office is required to explain the strategy behind the choice. Picture a woman whose husband passed away when she was 62. She'd worked her whole life too, and had her own modest Social Security record built up. She walked into her local office, gave them her husband's information, and was told her survivor benefit would begin immediately. What she wasn't told, what nobody sat her down and explained, was that she could have claimed a smaller, reduced benefit based on her own record first, let her husband's survivor benefit continue to grow untouched until she reached her full retirement age, and then switched over to the larger, full survivor amount. Instead, she locked in a permanently reduced number at 62, and there was no phone call 3 years later letting her know she'd made the wrong choice. She simply kept receiving the smaller amount, month after month, for the rest of her life. That's the strategy hiding inside these two options, and it's worth saying plainly, because it's the single most valuable piece of information in this entire video. If your own retirement benefit, based on your own work history, would eventually grow to be larger than your survivor benefit, you can claim the survivor benefit first, starting as early as age 60, and let your own retirement benefit keep growing in the background, all the way up to age 70, when it maxes out. Then, once your own benefit has grown past what the survivor benefit would give you, you switch over to your own record. Or, it can work the other direction entirely. If your survivor benefit is going to be the larger of the two, you can claim your own smaller retirement benefit first, let the survivor benefit continue to grow, and then switch to the survivor benefit once it's reached its full, unreduced value at your full retirement age. Either direction, the principle is identical. Claim the smaller one first. Let the larger one keep growing untouched. Switch when it's worth more. Nobody at the counter is going to lay this sequence out for you, because their job is to process the application in front of them, not to run the math on which order saves you the most money over 20 or 30 years. Now let's talk about timing, because this is where the real money either gets protected or gets permanently lost. A survivor benefit can start as early as age 60, but claiming it that early comes with a real reduction, and that reduction is locked in for the rest of your life. It does not correct itself later. If you wait until your own full retirement age to claim the survivor benefit, you receive the entire amount, 100% of what your spouse's record entitles you to, with no reduction at all. The years between 60 and your full retirement age matter enormously here, because every year you claim early, before you're required to, is a year of reduction you're accepting permanently in exchange for money now instead of more money for the rest of your life. Here's a detail that catches people completely off guard, and it's the timing trap I mentioned at the start of this video. If you remarry before the age of 60, you generally lose eligibility for a survivor benefit based on your deceased spouse's record entirely. But if you remarry at age 60 or later, your eligibility for that survivor benefit is fully protected. Remarriage after 60 does not take it away from you. Picture a widower who met someone new in his early 60s, and out of caution, or simply because nobody had ever explained the rule to him, he assumed remarrying would cost him the survivor benefit he was counting on from his first wife's record. He waited years longer than he needed to, avoiding a decision that was never actually going to cost him anything, all because of a rule he'd misunderstood and never confirmed directly with Social Security. That's the cost of not knowing the two options exist and not knowing exactly how the timing works around them. There's another detail worth knowing because it comes up more often than people expect. If your spouse was already collecting reduced retirement benefits when they passed away because they'd claimed early, your survivor benefit is generally calculated using a specific rule that accounts for that early claiming reduction. This is exactly the kind of detail that a general phone call to the Social Security office may or may not surface clearly, depending entirely on who happens to answer that day, which is exactly why bringing a written list of questions with you matters more than people realize. You might be sitting there wondering something completely reasonable right now. If switching between benefits can genuinely be worth tens of thousands of dollars over a lifetime, why isn't someone explaining this the day your spouse passes away? Here's the honest answer. The Social Security Administration processes an enormous volume of claims every single day, and the person helping you is trained to answer the specific question you ask, not to volunteer a multi-year strategy you never brought up. If you walk in and ask for your survivor benefit, they will set up your survivor benefit. If you walk in and ask for your own retirement benefit, they will set up your own retirement benefit. Nobody is required to sit you down and explain that a different sequence, claim one now, switch to the other later, could be worth significantly more over the course of your life. That gap between what's technically available to you and what's actually explained to you is exactly where this money quietly disappears for so many widows and widowers. Let's talk about who this actually matters most for, because I've watched two different groups wrongly assume this doesn't apply to them. If your own work record was thin, maybe you stayed home to raise children or worked part-time for years, you might assume your spouse's survivor benefit is automatically your only real option and skip thinking about the switching strategy altogether because your own number feels too small to matter. But even a modest benefit you claim early, while your survivor benefit continues growing untouched in the background, can meaningfully add up over several years, so it's worth running the numbers rather than assuming. And if you were the higher earner in your household, you might assume the survivor benefit doesn't apply to you at all, since your own record was always the bigger one. But if your spouse claimed their retirement benefit late, closer to age 70, the survivor benefit calculated off their record could actually end up higher than you'd expect, so it's worth checking rather than dismissing it outright. Now, here's your actual plan, because when you're grieving, a clear list of steps is sometimes the only thing that keeps you moving forward. Step 1, contact Social Security directly, by phone or in person, and specifically ask them to run both numbers for you, your own retirement benefit at different claiming ages and your survivor benefit at different claiming ages. Don't accept a single number without asking to see both side by side. Step 2, ask this exact question out loud. Can I claim one of these benefits now and switch to the other one later? And if so, at what age does that make the most sense for me specifically? This is the question that opens the door to the entire strategy we've walked through today. Step 3, if you're remarried or considering remarriage, confirm your exact age and how it affects your specific eligibility, because the rule changes sharply right at age 60, and it's worth confirming your own situation directly rather than relying on something you heard secondhand. Step 4, write down whatever they tell you, including the specific numbers and the specific ages involved, and if anything feels unclear or rushed, ask if you can request a written breakdown of your options before you make a final decision, because this is not a choice you want to make on the spot, under pressure, on what may already be one of the hardest days of your life. This is general information, not personal, financial, or legal advice. Social Security rules around survivor benefits, remarriage, and claiming ages can vary based on your specific work history, your spouse's work history, and your individual circumstances. So confirm your exact numbers and options directly with the Social Security Administration before making any claiming decision. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. Losing a spouse is already one of the hardest things a person can go through, and the very last thing you should have to face on top of that grief is quietly locking yourself into less money than you were actually owed, simply because nobody sat you down and explained that you had a choice. You do have a choice. You have two benefits, not one, and in many cases, you have the ability to claim one first and switch to the larger one later. The Social Security office will give you exactly what you ask for. It's up to you to ask the right question. If someone in your life has recently lost a spouse or is caring for someone who has, send them this video today, because the difference between the version of them who asks the right question and the version who doesn't could be worth tens of thousands of dollars over the years ahead, and no one at that office is going to bring it up unless they do. Subscribe, because next week we're covering what happens to your spouse's pension and retirement accounts beyond just Social Security, and where these same claiming strategies do and don't apply.